The speaker has lost the respect of the conference. And it's not out there in the public for everyone to see because we're trying to hold it together and we're trying to win on November 5th.
As we recently discussed, despite overt pressure from Donald Trump and the far-right flank of his own party, beleaguered Republican Speaker of the House Mike Johnson recently folded and said he would act to avoid a government shutdown, knowing that Republicans would be punished in the upcoming election if they chose not to do so. And as a consequence of this, MAGA Republican cultist Marjorie Taylor Greene is once again taking shots at Mike Johnson, signaling that the MAGA civil war, which has been long simmering, is about to boil over again right before the election. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have a couple of clips to look at in this video. As a reminder, the MAGA civil war has been effectively ongoing really since they took the majority in the House of Representatives back in January 2023. You'll recall that then Speaker Kevin McCarthy needed more than a dozen attempts to become Speaker of the House, an historic embarrassment. And this was because of infighting within his own party, particularly resistance from the far right flank led by Matt Gaetz. It really started then, and it continued, and it's actually outlasted McCarthy. McCarthy, of course, was removed from the speakership by his own party in late September, early October 2023. He ultimately resigned from Congress back in December 2023. And Mike Johnson, his successor, has basically been in the same vote. He understands that he doesn't have the margins to dictate terms to President Biden and Senate Democrats and even House Democrats, especially when his own caucus in the House, one chamber, is fighting amongst themselves. Donald Trump constantly putting pressure on Mike Johnson to do the most politically inexpedient and costly thing is also not helping him at all. As a reminder, Donald Trump recently publicly demanded that Republicans shut down the government unless they included in the funding legislation a bill which would criminalize non-citizens voting, which has been a criminal act for 30 years, completely unnecessary. The only thing it would do is potentially make it more difficult for eligible American citizens to vote. So it was basically dead on arrival. But this is what Trump said. If Republicans don't get the SAVE Act and every ounce of it, they should not agree to a continuing resolution in any way, shape, or form. Democrats are registering illegal voters by the tens of thousands as we speak. They'll be voting in the 2024 presidential election, and they shouldn't be allowed to. All of that's nonsense, by the way. Only American citizens should be voting in our most important election in history, or any election, which, as far as federal law is concerned, that's going to happen. A vote must happen before the election, not after the election when it's too late. Be smart, Republicans. You've been pushed around long enough by the Democrats. Don't let it happen again. Remember, this is Biden-Harris's fault, not yours. So Trump, of course, trying to appeal to Mike Johnson's vanity, his sense of machismo, like, hey, don't let the Democrats slap you around. Stand up for yourself. Well, I have no sympathy for Mike Johnson. I think he has actively contributed to the mess that is the MAGA movement and has contributed to the decay of the political environment in this country. But Mike Johnson is smarter than Donald Trump, and he's like, damn, I don't really have the numbers to make this happen. So again, despite the bluster, despite Johnson's own bluster, because he liked to thump his chest and talk a good game, he ultimately blinked in the staring contest and conceded that allowing a government shutdown before an election would hurt Republicans in the election. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not happy about this at all, and she's not flying off the handle the way that she used to. She's actually surprisingly calm and poised for Marjorie Taylor Greene standards at the very least. But in this recent interview, she does signal that she's very upset with Mike Johnson, that most Republicans are very upset with Mike Johnson, and that Mike Johnson is much weaker than his position should enable him to be.
Well, he has immense power, but this is a different situation. This speaker has lost the respect of the conference. And it's not out there in the public for everyone to see because we're trying to hold it together and we're trying to win on November 5th. But it's a lot different on the inside than it appears on the outside, Dave. And yes, typically.
So there you go. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, by the way, for all her stupidity, has become a quick study relative to other MAGA cultists. Marjorie Taylor Greene is an anti-Semite, a bigot, a xenophobe, just so much emblematic of the worst that America has to offer. But she's actually not the dumbest person in Congress. As a matter of fact, when Kevin McCarthy was Speaker of the House, even though many people thought he was insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. I disagree. I think that he showed that he was absolutely willing to cast whatever personal disagreements and personal distaste he may or may not have had for Trump aside, sacrifice it on the altar of political expedience. But despite that being the perception of McCarthy, Marjorie Taylor Greene worked overtime to become a close ally of Kevin McCarthy. As a matter of fact, many people referred to her as the shadow speaker of the House, the de facto speaker of the House. She recognized that he was on paper the most powerful elected Republican as the Speaker of the House, and so she worked to try to influence him. And it paid off in many respects. She got some pretty cushy committee assignments. She had the ear of the Speaker of the House. For whatever reason, Mike Johnson and Marjorie Taylor Greene have not been able to eke out that sort of relationship. She's been an outspoken critic of Mike Johnson really since he took the job. And again, I'm fine with that because more MAGA infighting is better for the country as opposed to like a unified MAGA movement. But even the savvy there, she says, listen, there's a lot of infighting going on. But unlike how it's been over the past year, we're trying to keep it together because we want to win November 5th. So basically what she's saying is things are really tense right now. And she disagrees with Mike Johnson bending the knee and capitulating to just the reality that he can't assert his will on the rest of government. But the tension is there and it's straining. And they're doing everything in their power to keep it together, to bite their tongues and just get through the election. Now, we've talked about this, like recent polls show things are not looking good for House Republicans. I think of all the elections, be it the Senate, the presidency, the House, I think it's pretty clear that the House is the most favorable for Democrats. I would say more likely than not, Republicans will lose the House majority. They're trying to keep it together, which is unlike them because they have been spilling this stuff out in public. That's why the Civil War, which had been long boiling, is now at a simmer. But the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene is actually publicly talking about this and disrespecting Mike Johnson suggests that this could very easily boil forth again. You think about it. We have 5 weeks until the election? 6 weeks? Plenty of time for this, time bomb within the GOP to go off. And I think Democrats should be doing everything in their power to make it happen because this could also exacerbate Republicans' chances of losing the election, and not just for the House, but really for the Senate and White House as well. Again, it's politically beneficial to Democrats to be able to point to a dysfunctional MAGA caucus. And it says something that Marjorie Taylor Greene is aware of that. So you can see she's like, he sucks. I hate him. He's weak. He's feckless. He's not using his power the way, but you know what? We're trying to be a unified front here because we got to win the election. I find it so fascinating. As far as I can tell, Donald Trump has not publicly reacted to Mike Johnson's decision not to push the SAVE Act and to avoid a government shutdown. But as I said, I imagine he's quite upset about it, given that he publicly demanded that Republicans shut the government down anyway, regardless of the political consequences. So just want to bring this to your attention. It looks like, again, the simmering MAGA civil war is continuing to simmer. The burner is not off. The pan in this metaphor is still quite hot. But it seems like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others are doing everything in their power to bite their tongue and keep it together. The only question is, given the lack of impulse control which animates the GOP, the fact that they listen so much to their id, don't you think that it's very likely that Republicans snap and fight amongst themselves in the public, vicious way that they did just a few months ago? And do you think that Democrats can do anything to make that a reality? Let me know what you think in the comments.